Today's session is talking about your programs and maximizing how you organize and the efficiency of getting a program created. So I'm going to go through in detail the organization and the screen you see up on my computer right now and now on your computer. First of all, in the Sentinel software, we organize the entire system, and I hate using the word system because I'm using it right there, but we organize your site into systems and satellites. And when I say systems, it's a group of controllers. So under each system name, you can have as many satellites or field controllers as you care to have. So let's say we have customers that have 5 controllers. They could have one system. We have customers that have hundreds of controllers. They could have 10, 20 systems. So the systems become means of you organizing these groups of controllers. You're going to see as I go through the software, the power of organizing these field controllers or these satellites. So when I say satellites and field controllers, it's essentially the same thing. It's just the kind of the nomenclature that gets associated to in the irrigation world. So in the Sentinel world, we use the word systems for groups, satellites, or those individual controllers. Within each satellite, on a version 3, you have the capability of creating or controlling 204 stations. Now that could be a 2-wire controller. It could be a controller with wireless stations. Now, you're not going to find a Sentinel controller that has internal output boards that have wires coming from the faceplate down to the output boards inside the controllers doing 204. But we have the ability to do multiple functions with the types of stations that we have. And so a lot of times when we start to get up in that 204 station range, it's normally when we have a 2-wire controller. Most conventional controllers are going to be in the 12 to 48 station range. We do a lot of conversions where maybe 2 controllers are consolidated into one, and we've done a lot of custom controllers that go up to 96 stations all in one cabinet. But you do have the capacity to go to 204. No matter how many stations you have under the control of your faceplate, it has to be divided up into 16 programs. Now that's a lot of programs. Is it normal to use all 16? No. Have I ever seen it done? Yes. Most users are breaking their stations up into 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 programs, depending on what functions that they need to do out there. So your program might be created for a certain area. If you're doing athletic fields, you might take soccer fields and create a program specific to your soccer fields, and another for the baseball fields, and another for whatever kind of fields that are out there. In the horticulture world, you might have a program that just does turf, and then another that does shrubs or beds or annuals. Some people do it by sprinkler type. Some people create programs that are just for drip. Some people do it for spray heads on the turf. So you have a multitude of options on how you want to break these programs up. Within each program, you can have up to 48 stations within the program, and we'll get into details of this. So if I want to run a program or create a program, I can put my stations in order, and I'll show you how to do that. That can run whatever order I want, but within that single program, when it's set to come on, it cannot run through more than 48 stations. So let's look at something as an example of how this would be organized. If we started putting names to systems, and say I have a college or university campus, And we have a number of them that we do Sentinel on. I don't even know how many, but it's a lot. And we get into some of these college campuses, and they get up into over 100 controllers. These controllers can be on academic buildings, they can be on dormitories, they can be on intramural fields, they can be on regular sports complexes, part of campus. And so you can have a system such as I have here, which I would call this all-inclusive. If I create a system and I give it a name called All Campus Controllers, more than likely what I'm going to do is take every controller that I've created and add it into my Sentinel software and put it under the umbrella of that system name. So let's say that I wanted to shut everything off in the winter. The easiest, simplest way to do this is to push out a rain hold for, say, a couple of 100 days to all of my controllers. So once everything is winterized, if you're in the northern climates and you winterize and you want to rain hold everything, you want to do it all at one time. You go to the system name called All Campus Controllers, you open up rain days and you type in a number 200, or it can be even a pre-saved rain hold, and you hit send. In a matter of about 3 steps, I've sent out a rain hold that is essentially shut off my entire irrigation system until I decide that I want to turn it back on in the spring. And those controllers would be possibly numbered. I'm starting here at 001. They don't have to be, but I'm starting at 001 and I'm going up in number. And I could have up to 999 controllers. There's no site in the United States that goes that high. Now, we do have some that get up into over, I think, 600. We do have some big systems out there. So this is a way that it could get organized. Now, you can have your controllers in more than one system. So if I wanted to have a second system in my software that I call academic buildings, I could create a second system called academic buildings and link these controllers just to the academic buildings. So let's say that I needed to adjust, and I only want to adjust something related to the controllers for academic buildings, whether it's rain hold, percent scale, whatever it may be, then I could organize my controllers that way. In the previous class this morning, when I talked about new features, one of the things that I showed was in the new software security was the ability to have people log in and only see their controllers that they're responsible for maintaining at their site. And these can be organized in a way so that these could be all created under these separate system names right there. So let's look at these specifics on the scheduled watering screen. Now, if you had not been on one of my previous sessions, let me explain something to you. The screen that I'm showing you right here is from version 3.3.4.8 software. If you have an earlier version, the names in your panel on the left side of your software, where it says satellite systems and weather sources, will appear different. We changed the names to match up to the version 3 controller. So when I look at the version 3 controller and I look at the buttons, I have a button here called Schedule Watering. I have a button here called Station Settings. I have a button here called Satellite Settings. Well, if you've got a version 2 controller, which does not have this dial and this big LCD, or look at anything like this on the screen, the buttons have different names. And so after a period of time, when we came out with the software, we decided that it was time to match the software up with the version 3 faceplate. So when I click in now on the left panel, and you'll see when I get into the software, it says schedule watering to open this screen right here. Okay, so let's look at this top bar right up here across the very top, and let's look at what these buttons do. And not everybody understands everything that's on here, so I'm going to go through each one. This far left button says checkup. If I'm doing a program, and as you can see in my example right there, I've got some red in the middle of the program. And anytime you see red on that program screen, or schedule watering, same thing, it's indicating that there's something wrong. And right in the center, it says checkup issue found. But it's also directing me a little more specific on this screen because it says W period alert, which would indicate, since it's right below the water window, that that's a water window alert. If I went in to checkup, I would get even more specific information, but it's pretty obvious what I see right there. Anytime you have red on that screen, that's telling you you have some sort of problem that needs your attention to it. And when you make the change, the red goes away, and we'll do this. So in the Sentinel world, we have memory in the controller that I just flipped over to. We have memory in the software. The memory in the controller gets stored in a couple of locations. There's a chip, and there's what's called an SD card. In the computer, it's stored in a file that we refer to as a database. Your database is sacred on your computer. It has a file extension .mdb for Microsoft Database. You should always make a backup copy. You should always make a copy off of the computer and put it on a flash drive. In the event something happens to your computer, hard drive crash, computer gets stolen, whatever it may be, if something happens, you have a backup to it, then you reload software, reload your database. But not all is lost. In the event that maybe you didn't have a backup, which I've seen happen, and a user loses all their data in their computer, worst case scenario is that you reinstall software, you recreate your controllers and manage from another tool, another menu bar. You add in all the unit numbers and you set up the communication, and then you receive. So when you receive, like you see on this screen right here, you're syncing whatever is in the controller back into the computer. So it syncs the data from the controller. If I make changes in my software and I hit save in my software, that does not automatically put the data into my controller. The controller data goes in as soon as there is a transmit of that data from the computer to that controller. It's not just going to magically happen, okay? When I say this, it can be done automatically. This is a function of the software you have to set up, which we're going to get into in a more advanced future class that I'm going to do in a couple of weeks. So it can be done automatically. But if I don't have that set up and I make a change on this screen without me manually hitting send right here, it doesn't just appear in the controller. So you have to remember that if I make a change and I hit save and it's stored in my computer in that database file, something is going to have to send it, whether it's me pushing send or I'm letting the computer do it tonight automatically. For me to save the data, I would hit the button. It's on most of the screens that you see in the Sentinel software. And if you've been running the software for any period of time, this is not anything new to you right there. Now, let me just say this. Let's say that there have been changes that have been done in the field, which often happens. A lot of times controllers get pre-set up in the field, especially on a new controller, and then it's, instead of being replicated in the software, it's received in the software back into the computer. But let's say that your contractor came out there and did this, and all they did was just kind of put in a starter program. They just put in all the zones, and they put 10 minutes a zone, and they're letting it run every day, every other day, whatever it may be. So it's not really what you or I would call an irrigation program. It's just kind of a starter program. So you receive it back, and you look at it, and it's got zones 1 through 24, and they've got 10 minutes on it. You go, that's not what I want. I'm going to do another program. Well, all you've got to do, if you don't hit save, it's not in your database. What you would do is hit refresh. So if you've already created a program, you hit refresh, that is like hitting the undo button on any other computer program. Hit the undo, and then what it does is it reverts to the last saved screen that you had. So if you've already done a program and you say, okay, before I send this out to the field, let me hit receive and just see what's out there. And it comes back and it's a bunch of, garbage that you don't want to keep. You just hit refresh, and then you can hit send. When you hit send, it overwrites what's in the controller. To the right of this, I'm going to get into this afternoon. We're going to use this button called description. When you use description, what you are essentially doing is creating labels for your program. So you're giving some sort of name organization, so to speak, to your program. As I was using examples earlier, could be by location, could be entry roadway, it could be my soccer fields, it could be my turf, it could be shade, it could be annuals, whatever you want it to be, you can create it. And you'll see as we create descriptions that it gives you an enormous amount of power to make quick changes throughout your irrigation system. When you go to erase, let's just say that you had something in your software and say you received it, or whatever reason you had something in there, you say, I want to start over from scratch right here. Maybe you were running that starter program and you had it back in your software. Maybe you created it in your software. But now I want to go and I want to start something as a traditional irrigation program, a Monday, Wednesday, Friday program, whatever it may be. And I want to get all the crud out of there. If you click on that button, erase, then hit save, wipes out everything there. Wipes it all out. All right, so let's look at a little bit. Well, I guess before I do that, Bruce, have any questions come in that we need to address?
Jim, so far there haven't been any questions.
Okay, please don't be shy to anybody out there on this. Type in your questions. So with a previous version of software, the software programs were organized in what we used to refer to as clusters. The clusters were alphabetically organized into A, B, C, and D groups. And then they were organized into subgroups, A1, A2, A3, A4. And it served a purpose in the fact that you might take your turf programs and put them on the A group. You might take your beds and put them on B, or you might take your baseball fields and put them in A, whatever reason that they might be. But to a lot of people, it was just confusing having the alphabetical and then the numeric grouping. So in the version 3, controller, when I get into the controller, everything is organized numerically 1 through 16. And so we matched up the software to what the version 3 faceplate would show. And so the software now has in its tabs 1 through 16. We also have what are called schedules. There are 16 schedules. And they 16 schedules depending on your version of controller. If you have any version 3 controller, you have 16 schedules. I'm trying to remember back in the old days of version 2, there were I don't think there were 16 schedules. I can't remember what it was, but if you've got anything current over the last probably 10 years, you're going to have 16 schedules. Well, what's the difference when you see schedules and programs? Schedules are patterns of days. are what they are. Programs are going to be associated with a schedule. So a pattern of days may be created to be something traditional like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, every other day, odd days, even days, one day a week, whatever you decide you may want it to be. Programs are going to be whatever valves that you want in a program associated to one of those patterns of days. And so that is the distinction between a program and a schedule. We're going to look at it when we get into the software screen so you see exactly what I'm referring to. So I've already mentioned before that each controller has 16 programs or a limitation of 16 programs. If you get a second controller, second faceplate, you've got 16 new programs. We talked about in the communication class, if you were on that in that class, about using wireless ports to extend the station capacity of an existing controller. If I have 48 stations in an existing controller and I want to expand the capacity and I go, say, 500 feet away and I install what is called a long-range wireless port, and I put another 48 stations in that wireless port. I have essentially combined the two boards into one controller, so I now have 96 stations. You are still dividing those 96 stations up into 16 programs. Now, one thing to note, you can put your stations in as many programs as you want. So it's, if I decide to put station 1 in program 1, I could put it in program 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way through 16. It doesn't keep you from putting it into another program right there. I have 16 schedules per program. I have 48 slots per program. And I have 204 stations per controller, which I've already talked about. This I have not. You can put 255 minutes in a station. So let me show you real quick how this relates to our controller. So I'm going to go to schedule watering right here. And I'm going to turn the dial till we see what is called slot station time. When I hit slot station time and I see P01, that means that I'm looking at program 1. That would be the same thing as me putting that tab 1 in the software in the foreground. If I move my dial over to that first number right there, that represents the slot. Now let me define in the Sentinel world what a slot is. A slot is the order that you want the stations to come on. So think of it that way. So what station do I want to come on first is what I'm looking at right here. If I move my button over, oh, went one too much. If I move it over to the next number, it says 001. But watch what happens. If I go counterclockwise on my dial, it goes to 204. I can essentially take any station that I want to run first and put it there. And if I move over to here, I can put the runtime in it. So all I'm doing is essentially saying, program 1, what station do I want to have come on first? And I'm saying right there that it's station 6. If I move over here, I'm saying, okay, which one do I want to come on second? So you've got to get kind of that mentality of, you know, what do I want to have in that order? So think of it that way. These boxes right here represent that order. In the order that they run, they start at the top left, right here at the bottom where my boxes begin. Start at the top left, and they go left to right, top to bottom. So slot 1 in this example would have station 8 on it with a runtime of 6 minutes. Slot 2 would have station 1 on it for 6 minutes. Slot 3 would have station 2 on it, so on and so forth. And you'll see we're going to play around with this just a bit. In just a minute, we're going to change some things around. So let's look at the icons, the different icons that appear on the tab. So I just mentioned before that if I click on one of those tabs, it comes forward. So you can kind of notice that tab 1, the number 1 is just slightly bolder than 2, 3, 4, or any of the others. That means that this is the current active program that I'm going to edit. When you see the blue dot on that tab, that is indicating to you that it is a completely empty program. I have no stations assigned to any of the slots. I have no runtime in the slot boxes. I have no start times. I can have some run days. It doesn't matter because it's going to be on a schedule. But there is nothing in that program that would allow it to run. That is an unused, erased program. If I move over to the right to the next tab, if I were to create a program, and if I happened to have put stations next to the slot boxes, runtime in the boxes, in my, for the slots, I put a start time, I have an active day, and I save it, and no icon appears, then what I have created is essentially just a standard, traditional irrigation program. It's not being affected by weather. It's not being affected by a soil sensor or anything like that. Just a conventional program is what that's telling me. But it's also telling me something's scheduled to run. So if you don't intend for anything to run, you need to check that program. Looking at this icon that's on the tab, if you were to come in here and check the ET-based runtime box, and I'm not in the foreground, therefore it's not checked, but if I were to check this box or click over to 3, you would notice that the ET-based runtime box was checked. It would also have station information in here. With ET, you do not have to put runtimes in the boxes, and we're going to go through that, not today, but on the class that we do on ET and weather stations. You're going to see how to set that up. That's indicating to you that that program is being affected by weather data. Now, that's not being affected by a rain sensor. But if you were on the session this morning and you saw what I went through as far as that new internet-based Precision ET, you could use have a program and have it affected by Precision ET and never have a weather station installed anywhere, which is really cool. And you'll have that capability by summer. If I go to the next tab and you see this water droplet, I also talked about that this morning in the fact that we've added some new functionality with our soil moisture sensors. We actually have added a new tethered sensor on the 2-wire cable. If you have a program and you see that water droplet, what you would see if I were to click on 4 and bring it to the foreground, right there where it says moisture control, I'd have a check in that box. And therefore, this program would be affected by moisture. And again, we're going to have a whole separate class going through how to set up a program on moisture. Moving to the right of that, if you create a program and you put stations on your slot boxes, however many you want, and you put a runtime, say you put 3 minutes in the boxes, but you do not give it any start times and you do not give it any active days. You put it on a blank schedule and you save it, and you see this little green arrow to the right. That is telling you you have created a test program or some sort of syringe program that needs to be activated manually. So to activate it manually, right here on the screen, I could come if I wanted to. Let me get my pointer, get right here, and I could click on Start Now. I could start it from here. I could be in the field. I could go to the faceplate. I could go to manual. I could start program 5 from the keypad. If I have a radio remote, I can use my remote to go ahead and start this program from the remote. And so you have the ability to manually start this, but the only way it will start is manual, unless you come back and added a start time to it. And then the last one is, you see this little clipboard. The clipboard is indicating that you have partially added information in on your program, but you have not completed what you have to add to make that program run automatically. So it could be that you had stations next to the slot boxes, runtime in the boxes. You had days set to come on, but you took the start time out. If you take the start time out, you're going to get that little clipboard. And again, as I mentioned a minute ago, if you wanted to, you could go up to the checkup button, click checkup, and it would indicate exactly what's missing out of the program to let you know what you have to finish to make that program work. So if you look at that, I've got, as far as really active programs that are going to run automatically, program 2, 3, 4, that's it. 5 is the manual program. 6 is an incomplete. Programs 1 and 7 through 16 are completely unused and are waiting for you to use them if you feel like you need to use them right there.
Jim,
So,
we have a question on the Start Now button.
yes.
The question is, will the Start Now button work on a partially built program and also a fully developed program?
Yes, it'll work on both if you do that. The only thing, and Bruce, correct me if I'm wrong on this, if you are using a water window on your program and your water window says maybe 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. and you do start now at, say, 1 p.m. in the afternoon, I do not believe it starts. Do you know, Bruce, on that? I think that water window is kind of like the rock, paper, scissors on there.
Yep, it's what we consider a semi-automatic start, and it still obeys the water window.
It does. So it will start if you do not have a start time in there. That is correct. But you've got to, if you use water windows, which we'll talk about in a moment, if you use water windows, it needs to be inside the water window in order to come on. Any other questions, Bruce, before I move on?
Nope.
Okay, good question. Thank you all for asking that. So let's look at this. 16 independent programs per controller. Each program will have its own start times, 8. Each program, we were just talking about it, will have its own water window. Each program will have its own percent scale adjustment. Each program will have its own repeat and delay function if you decide you want to do that right there. You have 16 independent schedules per controller. Remember, the schedules are patterns of days. The schedules are a 6-week rolling schedule of active days, which you'll see me manipulate in a little bit. They're set up for different functions, and I already gave some examples. Every day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, whatever you may want it to be. So that's for your control, your decision. You can, I'll get into more of this as I get into the actual screen live in the software here in a minute. So when we look at this screen, here's our station number, and it happens to be on slot 1. Here's your runtime. It's inside the box. There's your start time. Starts up at the top. Now you can skip it. I've seen some people before, for whatever reason, jump down to like the 3rd box and put a start time. It's going to perform the same way as if you see it right there on it. I like to kind of have it clean when I open this up. So if I'm only doing one start, I typically, want to see that top box checked, and then put a start time in there. And then here is your schedule number. So if you look at this and notice up on the tabs, which program is active, which one we're looking at editing here. We're looking at editing program 2. So program 2 has stations 1, 2, 3, 4 included with it. Each one is set for 15 minutes. Start time is 4 a.m. and it's associated with schedule 1. And then the last thing that shows you here is that schedule 1, the pattern of days that it's set to, is a Tuesday, Thursday pattern. Now I can change this, which we're going to go in and change in a minute when we get into the software. But I need to be extremely careful when I change what I'm also potentially changing in my controller. So when you have a program, it will run. It will run in the controller if you've assigned station numbers to the slots, just like you see with my red circle right there. If you put runtime associated to that slot and that station number, if you've given it a start time, and if you've linked it to a schedule that has active days, then it will actually come on right there. And I should add one other thing to here because I've seen this happen in the field. I don't have it circled, but I should. You see that my percent scale is 100. You need to be above 0 on your percent scale. So if somebody's inadvertently gone into that program, and at this one particular site that I'm thinking about, I had a contractor that put a controller in, put all these things, these 4 items in, kept telling me he couldn't get it to come on. Finally, I walked through with him on the faceplate, and when he got to percent scale, I had him go into percent scale, and it was set to 0. So when it was set to 0, essentially it wiped out the runtime that was in those boxes right there. Just something that, in addition, it should be defaulted at 100, but if for some reason it's not coming on, check it. Remember, if you do data entry, and most of everybody that's on here has been working with Sentinel, knows to save it, send it, and if you receive it, either save it, refresh it, and decide what you want to do with that. Okay? So I'm going to move over, and we are going to go into our software, and I've created a controller right here that we will go into the schedule watering screen. And so when I open up schedule watering, I want you to notice that I have one program in here that shows 24 zones, and they all have 30 minutes on it. I'm going to go ahead and erase it. So you notice when I erase, I'm going to hit refresh. It's going to bring it right back to where it was. I'm going to hit erase, and it wipes it out. It also is showing that it's on schedule 1. So let me just save what I have. I erased it and saved it. So I have no stations associated to any of these slot boxes. So I'm going to go ahead and start putting in some stations in here. So one way that I'm going to do this, which I'll call the slow way, is to click on the 0 to the left of my first slot. And if I enter in a zone number, I just entered in 1, I could then click inside the box and put time, and then click on the next one and then put time. Okay, but I'm going to be sitting here for a while, especially if I have to put in quite a few zones right there. So another way that I could do this is if I click on to that first number and say I put a 1, and then use the tab button on my keyboard, it's going to tab me right over to my next slot box, and I'm just going to tab over to and keep going and put these in. All right, so I'll put 5 zones in. Now I'm going to click inside the box, and I'll put 10 minutes and then tab, 10 minutes, tab, and then I'll put 8 minutes, tab, 5 minutes, tab, and I'll put 10 minutes. So now I've done it a different way to speed it up a little bit, but there's some other ways to get even faster. But before I go there, I want to show you too what you can do. I put all of these zones in numeric order. One of the coolest, most powerful things about the Sentinel software and the controller, if you remember, I pulled up that slot. I'm on slot 1. What station do I want to come on first? Let's say that I want station 7 to come on for whatever reason. I'm going to put station 7 first. Then I'm going to tab over and I'm going to put station 2. Then I'm going to tab over and I'm going to put station 1. Then I'm going to tab over and put station 5. And then I'm going to tab over and put station, say, 3. And I could do the same, that I was doing before, put my time in here. Whatever I want it to be, okay? So the other thing you need to realize is that you have complete flexibility, whether it's a 2-wire, conventional wire, to run your zones in any order whatsoever. If you do periodic walkthroughs, especially on 2-wire systems, and you want the walkthrough to be in a certain order. Maybe the walkthrough is the order that the valves follow along the 2-wire path. Maybe the walkthrough is that you're going to start at the front of the property and go to the back of the property. It doesn't matter. However you want to choose to do this, you can order these valves and put them any way you want. I'm going to show you a couple of other cool little things we can do here. So let's say that I skip the next slot box and I leave it at 0. And I put 10 minutes right here. And then I come in and I put station 12 and I put 5 minutes in here. What ends up happening is I have zone 7 coming on, then 2, then 1, then 5, then 3, and it runs for the amount of time that I have in these boxes. But then when it gets to here, it goes into a hold. Just stops. It's like a pause in the program. And then it kicks back on with zone 12. And zone 12 runs for 5 minutes. And then I could run zone 10. Whatever I may want to do and put this in here. The other cool thing I can do here is, let's say that zone 2 happens to be on a sloped area. So I've got 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 8, 10, 10. Then it waits 10 minutes, 5, 3, whatever. I can repeat zone 2 and put it back in here for another 5 minutes. So if I'm doing seasonal color, if I've got some heavy soils and they're on sloped areas, you can get as creative as you wish in your programs here to organize how these run. And take advantage of that. Because the more you start to think about how you do your programs, the more efficient you're going to be about applying your water. Now, let's say that I skip one of these boxes and I go all the way to here and I put zone 11 and I put 8 minutes in. Any box slot that has 0 on it and no runtime is if it's not even there. It will jump down to 11 and run 8 minutes after it runs station 2 or 5. And a lot of times what will happen is if it gets programmed in the field and you receive it back, you might see something like this because somebody's taken stations out of those slot boxes. When you go to the controller and you program at the controller, for the sake of making it run or program a little faster, what you'll find is that the slots and the stations are lined up. So if I go here, unless somebody's made changes, when I, slot 8 has station 8, slot 9, whatever, it's just defaulted that way. But I don't have to have it that way.
Your audio was a little poor there, sorry.
What's that?
Your audio was a little poor there.
Oh, that's because I'll turn my head to the microphone. Sorry about that. So I can, in the controller, it's going to default to the station to the slot. But when I get to my software, this is where you're really going to get the power. And I would, if you have software connected to your controller, this is where you're going to want to set your programs up right here on these. Are there any questions yet, Bruce, on anything here?
So Jim, are you going to go over the above there where it says programs, omit days, and volumetric, moisture control, irrigation?
Yep, I'm going to go through all that. So give me just a second here. So I'm going to write this out that I did. And now instead of me clicking on my slot boxes, I'm going to show you a bit faster way to program. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right here where it says Station Search. And when I open up Station Search, it opens up a box and it shows 1 through 204 for all of my potential zones that I could have on a version 3. One way I could do this is if I just left click on my mouse and say I have the first 10 zones, I want those to be in a program. And then I come to the button on here for Station Search and hit Add to Program. Now doing it right here, I can either do it across all zones and say I want 20 minutes on all of them, and when I hit Apply Changes, it puts it on all zones. And you notice in the orange boxes, it's all there. If I wanted to have those zones but have different time, I would hit Next Slot, Next Slot, Next Slot, and I could individually put the time in on those zones. So let me clear this out, and let me clear this out. I could go back into Station Search, but this time, instead of just doing a range of stations, I'm going to hold down on the control button, and I'm going to select the valves that I want to put into the program, okay? And so now I'm going to pick these valves and have them in. Now, they're still going to come in a numeric order, but they're not 1 through 10 or whatever they are. I have zones 2, 3, 6, 8, whatever on those zones, and I just went ahead and applied 20 minutes to each one. Kind of the same thing I did before. So if you happen to have a sheet next to you and you know what your zones are, then that's a way to do this. But I'm going to show you another way to do it. If you've spent a little bit of time and you've populated your station descriptions on your station settings screen like I did right here, okay? So I'll put labels on the station description, station type. This is up to you how you want to do it. I see people do, okay, entry to roadway, down, plant bed to the left of blah, 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 whatever it may be, and then the description. If I have those descriptions in and I use Station Search, when I click on Station Search, I can say, okay, I want to see all of my baseball zones. There they are. I want to see all of my turf zones. There they are. If I want to see the turf zones that are irrigated using T5 rotors, there it is. If I want to look at the turf zones using spray heads, there they are. So let's say that I want to put a program for my turf sprays. I'm going to add it to the program. Let's put in, say, 12 minutes on a zone, and I apply to the changes, and there you go. I have found all of these zones. I've put them in here. Okay, I'm going to save what I've got. So I've saved it, and look what it did. It says a checkup issue has been found, red, and it says red right here, no starts. I'm going to give this thing a start time. It said 11:40 a.m. Let's go 11:40 p.m. I like to kind of save as I go. Now, I want you to notice something here too. I did this and I chose these by name. I'm going to hover my mouse over the station number. So let's say that I had different kinds of stations in here. When I put my mouse over that station number, look at the little bar at the bottom. It says Turf 570 spray heads, and all of them are going to say that because I created a zone that way. But let's just say that I added, say, zone 6 right here, and I put 12 minutes on zone 6. I'll add that in there. If I were to put my mouse over zone 6, it says, hey, I'm running all these turf zones with spray heads, but zone 6 I have, it's baseball T7 rotors. It doesn't fit in there. I could take it out if I wanted. So that just is an indication to you of what you have. Now it shows me that what I have programmed is going to take a total of 2 hours. Remember, the default is 100%. If I started to manipulate this percent scale, that runtime changes. So now I'm down to an hour, 40 minutes. Let's just say I'm going to get it back to 100%. And let's use our water window. So I'm going to put a water window, and I'm going to say that my water window is 11 p.m. to maybe say, let's go 1 a.m. right there. And I got a water window. I got a checkup issue. It says, hold on a second. I'm going to save it. Checkup issue found, water window alert. Let's click our checkup button. And all checkup's going to do is it's going to give me a little more detail. It says my unadjusted time is 2 hours. It's coming on at 11:40, but it needs to run to 1:40 a.m. It says the 11:40 p.m. start is outside of my water window. So what are my options here? I can change my water window, or maybe I can start changing my percent scale. Say for whatever reason, you need to adhere to your water window. When I take my percent scale down, I took it down to 70%. When I get it to 70%, it fits now into the water window. All of these zones are going to run, but they're not going to run for the full amount of time that I'm showing right here. It's going to be 70% of what that time is. You see in these boxes. So if I decided that I wanted to put a repeat on here, and I hit save on it. I'm sorry, I put a delay. Let me go to a repeat. I was wondering why I wasn't getting an alarm. So I'll put a repeat on here. I immediately got the water window alert. So let's start opening up this water window a bit. So let's take this water window to like 6 a.m. I have a repeat. I have one repeat. I'm at 70%. I'm going to put a delay of, say, 15 minutes. Now, when I put a delay of 15 minutes, what happens is the way I have this program created, it comes on 11:40 at night. It's going to run for 70% of what I have scheduled. It is, after it runs through its first cycle, it's going to wait 15 minutes. Then it's going to repeat again after it does that. And it's going to take a total of 2 hours and 40 minutes. So I can go ahead, even though it's doesn't have a checkup, I can hit the checkup button, and it's going to show me right here that my unadjusted time is 2 hours. My adjusted time is 2 hours and 55 minutes. It's going to start at 11:40, but it's going to go off at 2:35 in the morning. So if I were having to program something else behind it, for whatever reason, I could come in here and start this program at, say, 2:40 a.m. because I just checked that over here and it indicated to me that I'm shutting off at 2:35. So you can use it for multiple purposes. Now, Bruce, well, what I don't have in here yet, and I may be able to jump over to another controller and pull it up. One thing that we're missing here, and I tell you what, I'm going to populate it real fast so that we get it, okay? I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to be doing a class specifically on how to use this screen, but I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to take these heads right here, and I'm going to put expected flow, and I'll make those, say, 17 gallons a minute, and then I'm going to take these right here, and I'm going to make these zones, say, 22 gallons a minute, And then I'm going to take these zones here, and I'll make these, say, maybe 12 gallons a minute. Okay. So now I've added some flow information in here, and I'll just show you why I'm doing this. I'm going to close this screen, and let me refresh. So what I wanted to show you now is once I have flow on my other screen, it says my water usage is going to be 1,040 gallons based on what stations I have programmed in here. So not only am I getting the amount of time it's going to take, it's going to tell me approximately how many gallons of water that I'm going to use. So you heard me mentioning before about the ET, about the moisture control. We have another function related to flow. You see that this program is going to consume theoretically 1,040 gallons. Let's say that your water is coming out of a contained source, a limited source, maybe a cistern or a pond that has a limited amount of water. You can have your programs associated to a volumetric limit. And I can check volumetric. Over in satellite settings, I can say either daily, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly. Here's the amount of water that I can use. If I exceed that water, shut that program off. This is particularly useful if you're going to get fined or you're going to run something dry and it's going to potentially cause damage. So you can have this program associated to volumetric shutdown. You heard me talking about, if you were on the new feature class this morning, about omit dates. That's where you would check this program to be associated to omit dates. If I want this program to be flow optimized, which we're not getting into today, but I'll just show you what happens to my start times. They go away except for one, because when I optimize, the optimizer function in the software automatically writes the start time. And lastly, on these boxes that I'm going to talk about is a box you shouldn't check unless you know exactly what you're doing. And here's why. If you check this box, you notice how the repeats go away. And let's say that I had a water window of 11 p.m. to 11 p.m. Essentially, there is no water window. It's 24 hours. And I start this program and it comes on at 11:40 p.m. It is in continuous cycle until the day becomes inactive right here. And I've seen people have 7 days a week active, and they had it accidentally checked in continuous run. And you know what ends up happening? It never shuts off. It's there for a purpose. And it's there, say that you're doing something where you want to try to establish some seed, establish some sprigs in the southern, Bermuda areas where we grow in sprigs. You might have some plant beds that have very shallow roots, and you want to just let it continuous run. And maybe you want to do it from 7 a.m. in the morning till 7 p.m. in the evening. You can let it cycle, or you can do it with repeats. There are multiple ways to do these programs right there. So you have options to do that. Bruce, are there any questions on anything right here?
Nope. So far, you're doing good, Jim.
Okay, so let's talk about schedules for a second. So you see that I'm on schedule 1 right here. Schedule 1 shows that it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and we have week 1 all the way through week 6. When I did this class last week, this little green box was on week 6. Now that I went past week 6, it rolled over and came back up to week 1. This green box is representing the actual active day or the day that I'm on. So I have this on schedule 1, and it happens to be Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So let's jump over here to program 2. And I'm going to add in stations on program 2 right here. And let me come in here, and I'm going to go back in, and I'm going to do stations 1 through 20. And I'm going to add them to the program. Okay, and I'm going to put 10 minutes on a zone, and I'm going to apply the changes right here. And I've got 10 minutes on these zones. So let's say that I want a start time here of 2 a.m. I'll change that over, and I'm going to save it. But I want these stations to run on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. So when you look at my pattern of days, they're not on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. I can individually uncheck these boxes. Or if you go up to the heading above the column and I click on it, those boxes, those check marks disappear, and I recheck the days that I want. And now those boxes, those check marks appear. So I'll save that. So I have program 1, I want it to be Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Program 2, I want it to be Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. I have just committed a big problem right here. I should say created a big problem. Because if I flip back over to program 1 and I look at program 1, it now also shows Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. And the reason for that is that it is also associated to Schedule 1. Well, the easy way to find out what programs share schedules is if you take your mouse pointer and move it over the calendar to the left of the schedule. Look at that. The default shows that every program comes in with Schedule 1 associated to it. So I have to make a decision. I got to fix this. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make Schedule 1 Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'll save that. Then I'll jump over here to 2. And for my power users out there, I know you know exactly what I'm doing. I changed it over to Schedule 2. Now, it doesn't have to match up. If I were to keep toggling through here, you notice the number continues to go up. And if I kept going, it would keep going up all the way to Schedule 16. But I'm going to put it on Schedule 2, and then I'm going to check Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. I'll save it. And when I move my mouse over the calendar, you'll notice that the only program that shows up right here is program 2. So it will run Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, but no other program in my controller will run that unless I happen to come in here and I wanted to put some zones on here. On program 3, I could also have it associated to program 1 or program 2. So let's say that here I wanted all of my drip zones, and I'll add that in here. And I'll put, say, 45 minutes on my drip zones, and I apply the changes. If I wanted to, I could have that come on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And let's say that I have that coming on at 8 a.m. in the morning. It can share Schedule 1. Or if I said, you know what, I want that to be on the Tuesday, Thursday, I could have it on Tuesday, Thursday, and I just shared it with Schedule 2. Or if I want it to be on its own schedule, I change it to Schedule 3, and maybe I just want it to come on Wednesdays. I'll put it on an entirely new schedule. So if there are any questions on that, please type it into Bruce so that we know on there. Okay? So what I want to talk about next on
Go
here.
ahead, Jim,
Is there a question, Bruce?
Nope, no questions. So you're doing good.
Okay. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go up here to description. And when I get to description, just like I was doing with kind of my station information, I can create some labels for my programs. Okay, so this is a more global tag that I'm going to put on here. So let's say that I'm going to do a global tag of turf. And I'm going to do a secondary tab of sun. I'm going to save that. And then I'm going to do another one where I'm going to go turf shade, and I'll save that. And then I'll do one that I will call, say, beds, and I'll do sprays, and I'll save that. Now I need to close out and come back in, and you'll notice that I have these tags right here. So let's look at these tags. So I've got program 1, and let's say that this program 1 is turf sun. So I'm on program 1, I'm going to save it. And then I go to program 2, and let's say that that's turf and that's shade. I'm going to save that. And let's say I'm going to do one more. I'm going to add in another one, and I'm going to do beds, and I'm going to do drip, and I'm going to save it right there. And I'm going to open it back up. And when I open it back up, now I've got beds where it says beds drip and sprays. And I'm going to go to program 3, and I'm going to tag that one beds drip. Now, they will appear up in this blue line, but I have to refresh this screen, so I'm going to close it for a second. I'm going to open it back up. And then when I open it back up,
Yes.
I'm on program 1. Oh, I must have tagged program 1. Somehow or another, I tagged that incorrectly. Let me go back. Oh, you know what I didn't do? I didn't save it as I did. So let me go back in here in program 1. I'm going to make that turf shade, and I'm going to hit that to the save right there. And then I'm going to go to program 2, and I'm going to open up my description box again, and I'm going to do here and save. Now let me open it and see if it's different. See if I did it right here as I'm trying to go through. There we go. Okay, so I've got turf sun. I go to the second program. I accidentally tagged that turf sun. I need to make that turf shade. My bad. I will save that. And then I go to program 3, and I didn't tag that one. Let me tag that one. I'm going too fast here. And I will make that drip to that. So I'll close it one more time. Apologize for my repeat here. I just want it correct. Turf sun, you see in the blue line. Turf shade on program 2. And beds drip. That's the way I want it on there. So what advantage is it for me now to have these tags? Well, when I have these tags and I come now down to my rain days, let me do rain days, and I'm going to rain days at the controller level here. And when I open up rain days, what it shows me, I can come in here and I have the option of clicking on all programs, or program 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way through 16. But after I put those descriptions in, if I scroll with my scroll bar all the way down, if I said, you know what, I want to rain day the shade, turf and the shade, and I want to put 3 days of rain hold to just this program, turf shade, then I can do it by name. But, you know, doing it at the controller level doesn't really give me a whole lot of power. If you have more than one controller, you're going to have a system created or multiple systems created. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my Systems tab. And if you use that consistency on your program descriptions across all of your controllers, and you create tags, and you have 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 controllers, whatever it is, and then you start putting tags on those controllers. Now when I come into Rain Days, and I say, okay, I want to go to the all controllers, and I'm going to go to my Turf in the Sun. Actually, we're going to do Rain Days, so let's go Turf Shade. And I'm going to put 3 days right here. And if I hit send, any controller that has that tag called Turf Shade will now be affected by that rain hold. Or if I choose to come in here to percent scale, and here again, this is where it becomes powerful. Let's say you're in a really hot period, and I go to Turf Sun, and I want to put, say, 12% more water down, and I type in that I'm at 112%, and I hit send. Well, now what I can do is I can hit send right here, and any program that has Turf Sun on it now gets 12% more water. Or I could say, you know what? I'm going to take my beds in the drip, and I'm going to cut back by 25%. Anything that has that tag, I hit send, gives me full control of an adjustment on all of those controllers that end up with that tag. So it gives you an enormous amount of power, makes you make changes to your irrigation at a very, few clicks, to which you would normally be going in and having to make adjustment after adjustment after adjustment to run times, start times, whatever it may be. So by putting those descriptions on your programs, it gives you a lot more flexibility and a lot more control than what you have out there in the field on there. So all of these would get automatically adjusted to what I did. So Bruce, is there anything you can think of I did not cover going through the what used to be called automatic operations in the software, now called scheduled watering?
No, I think the big pitfall for many people was the water window. I'm not a big fan of water windows. I only use them when I need to, and typically I'll uncheck them. I'll have them as no input in either one of them instead of the 8 a.m. a.m. And then I think the new controllers, Jim, the default used to be programs 1 through 16 were on schedule 1. I think the new controllers that you buy come programs 1 through 16 linked to schedules.
Yes, they do. They do. So we did make a change in the software. When you flip over to another program, it's going to default here. But we've made a change where when you get to schedule 4, 5, 6, it's already automatically going to default to its own schedule, and it's up to you whether you want to keep it or not. So let me just point out something, though, on this water window as we were talking about it. If I created a program in here and it starts at 11:40 p.m., and if it were to exceed 6 a.m. for whatever reason, maybe I accidentally put a start time in too late. If it's running on ET, the ET adjustment may have made it go out where it ran past my end time. What happens is that wherever you are on your irrigation cycle, it will automatically stop at your end time, at that to time. It does not automatically adjust all of your times to fit them into the window. That's for you to do and catch it here like we did before when it indicated the water window alert. So it's for you to find out, see that it did not fit in there, and for you to manually make the change. The controller is not going to identify that for you and squeeze it down. So you have to make that adjustment to it. Okay? So be aware of this. This is an insurance policy that you don't have something running during a period of time that you can't afford to have water. We see places, I have a huge Capital One campus west of town where I live here. People start, well, when everybody was going to the office, they'd start showing up at about 7 in the morning. They have a water window stop time, and they run on ET. And so they have a water window that stops it no matter what happens so that they can't have that water still running. This is good for schools and places like that. You can't have the water, but it's for you to use as a tool. It's not a necessary item for you to use. Bruce, are there any questions we need to address in the last few minutes before we end this session?
Yeah, so Jim, 2 questions came in. I think it was with regards to the water window. If you're on ET adjustment, will it tell you if you're outside of your water window and squeeze it down in there? And then the next question is, when using the optimizer and auto scheduler, will it stay within the water window?
Okay, so let me answer the second question first. With the optimizer, no, it does not necessarily stay within the water window. What it will show is that there's an error on that program, and it will probably not, it won't optimize that program because it can't fit it into it. And so as you go through the optimizer, and that's going to be a whole separate class when we do that, as you run the optimizer, it shows you which programs it optimized, and it shows you which programs it didn't optimize. That is going to show up as a program that did not optimize. So you're going to have to go back into that specific program and make an adjustment to it and open up the water window more than likely, or set it up so that it's there's ways to prioritize programs. So with the optimizer, you would individually have to adjust it. With the ET, what happens when you get into ET? And we're kind of getting a little into the weeds here, but what will happen when you do an ET program, and I'll do this when we get into that class, is that when I check ET right here, it opens up a ET box on my program screen. I don't have any data programmed in on my station settings to allow me to see this. But if I were to go into a controller that had plant factors and precip rates set up, I would have to come in here and put a hypothetical ET and say, if I were to get, say, 0.25, I could calculate what the runtime would be. So in essence, what I'm doing, I'm kind of looking at worst case scenario. And when I look at the worst case scenario, if I'm using a water window, which a lot of people have to, I would look at an ET that says, okay, I know that this is the maximum ET I can possibly run on any day. Because if you're ET, you notice that not everybody runs every day. And you can build ET up. And you might land on a day that says, okay, you need to put down a half an inch of water because it's been 2 or 3 days since you watered. And the ET has continued to accumulate. Well, you might not be able to accommodate that based on your water window. So you have to then tell the controller, my maximum ET for this month is going to be 0.35. So even though it says you need to put down 0.5, it'll cut it off at 0.35 and let it run inside your window. So I don't want to get too far into this. This is really a conversation I want to have on the ET class because we'll get in the weeds there and talk about this. and I'll have data to support it so you can see what happens. Anything else, Bruce? We've got a couple of minutes left.
Nope, that's you're caught up with the questions.
Okay. Well, we've taken up almost an entire hour and a half on just this screen. It's an important screen. It is the most important screen in software. It's the screen that everybody spends time going in and out of. Hopefully what we've been able to do here is to show you some alternative methods to programming, some faster methods to program that you can expedite what you normally do, get more power out of what you're programming by arranging the stations you want, playing around with delay times and repeats, things of that nature. With the descriptions, it's a huge opportunity there for you to go back on your existing programs. You don't need to start from scratch. Go back to your existing programs if you're not using descriptions and start labeling them and give them some descriptions. And then that'll give you much more power throughout your entire software